I hope that you're finding this Lenten course a rewarding and spiritually uplifting journey. The fifth station, Jesus is judged by Pilate. Our reading is from Luke 23:13 to 25. Pilate then called together the chief priests, the leaders, and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was perverting the people. I have examined him in your presence and have not found this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. Indeed, he has done nothing to deserve death. I will therefore have him flogged and release him." Then they all shouted out together, "Away with this fellow! Release Barabbas for us." This was a man who had been put in prison for an insurrection that had taken place in the city and for murder. Pilate, wanting to release Jesus, addressed them again. But they kept shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" A third time he said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found in him no ground for the sentence of death. I will therefore have him flogged and then release him." But they kept urgently demanding with loud shouts that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate gave his verdict that their demand should be granted. He released the man they asked for, the one who had been put in prison for insurrection and murder, and he handed Jesus over as they wished. There has been a tendency in the Christian telling of the Passion story to exonerate Pilate, or at least to make him an unwilling pawn of the Jewish leaders and crowds. Pilate, it is claimed, was a truth-seeking man who was caught between a rock and a hard place. Were it not for the pressure he received from the Sanhedrin and their supporters, he wouldn't have crucified Jesus. This view of Pilate falls short of the historical account in a number of crucial ways. First, it overlooks Pilate's record of cruelty in his dealings with the Jewish people. Far from being some benevolent ruler, Pilate frequently offended and grievously mistreated those he was sent to govern. The Jewish historian Josephus records an instance when Pilate used money given to the Jerusalem temple for one of his pet projects. When a crowd of Jews objected, Pilate killed a great number of them. The Gospel of Luke records a similar instance when Pilate killed several Galilean Jews and mingled their blood with the temple sacrifices. And the first century Jewish philosopher Philo of Alexandria once wrote a letter to Caesar in which, among other things, he blamed Pilate for briberies, insults, robberies, outrages, wanton injustices, constantly repeated executions without trial, and ceaseless and grievous cruelty. Second, it's unlikely that Pilate would have been forced to act contrary to his will by the Jewish leaders and the crowd they'd rounded up to call for the crucifixion of Jesus. Pilate was surely aware of Jesus' widespread popularity among the Jewish people. This would have been a major concern to him, especially during the Passover, when the normal population of Jerusalem, around 35,000, swelled to perhaps 10 times that number. In other words, if Pilate had wanted to keep Jesus alive, he could have gone over the heads of the Jewish leaders to the large group of Jesus' supporters and admirers. Pilate didn't need anyone's approval to have Jesus killed. He had the authority to order execution. But Pilate was no doubt concerned about whether such an action in the case of Jesus would lead to a revolt. So we have every reason to believe that Pilate in fact wanted Jesus to be crucified. Otherwise, he would not have sentenced him to death. Third, what we see in the Gospels is in all likelihood, a carefully scripted plot by Pilate. Knowing how popular Jesus was among the masses, Pilate knew he faced the possibility of insurrection if he himself was believed to be responsible for the death of Jesus. So he had to find a way to use his authority to crucify Jesus and at the same time to publicly wash his hands of this decision. In order to achieve this, he cleverly toyed with the Jewish leaders and their supporters until it appeared as if he was compelled against his will to have Jesus crucified. Now, Pilate could get rid of Jesus and at the same time ensure that popular anger would be directed at the Jewish leaders and not at himself or Rome. Pilate is a paradigm of the person who fails to take responsibility for his actions. Perhaps Pilate really believed he was innocent of Jesus' death. Perhaps he was play acting for his own political benefit. Either way, Pilate issued the verdict that sent Jesus to the cross. Yet he did so in such a way as to appear innocent of Jesus' blood. He did not take responsibility for what he had done. How often do we do this sort of thing ourselves? How often do we fail to take responsibility for what we have done wrong? Dear Lord, you know how easy it is for me to be like Pilate. I don't like to take responsibility for my failures. I find I can easily fool myself into thinking I haven't really done wrong. So forgive me, Lord, when I follow the way of Pilate. Help me to acknowledge my sins, both to myself and to you. By your Spirit, guide me to see clearly where I have missed your mark, so that I might confess and live in the freedom your forgiveness provides. Amen.